Have Molly hosting us today.
Yay.
Molly's a great friend to the chamber, and she's a Bullitt County Leadership graduate of the best class ever.
Ever.
Not that I don't appreciate them all, but that they have named themselves the best class ever. And very appreciative to have our sponsor, Sanders Ridge and Bullitt County Rewards, on with us today. And Ellen, yes, we are so excited to be doing the ribbon cutting for you next week. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Molly Burke.
All right. Thank you, everybody. It's so good to see you all. It's been a long time, so it's nice to participate in this, even if it's via Zoom. It's just nice to see everybody. So today, Jennifer and I are going to talk a little bit about Social Security disability, and often we get questions relating to whether or not a claimant can work while applying for benefits or while receiving benefits. And today we're specifically going to be talking about Social Security disability or Title II benefits. Supplemental Security Income, SSI, has a whole different set of rules about income and work. So today we're only going to address SSDI or Title II recipients. And I know Jennifer is going to kick some things off for us. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and then I'm going to come back in at the end. Obviously, any questions, we'll sure do our very best to answer them. And thanks again for the opportunity to be here today and to talk with y'all. Jennifer, do you want to start?
Okay. All right. So thank you again for allowing us to do Power Hour. Molly said it. We are going to be talking about Social Security disability insurance. So Social Security disability insurance is where you've worked and you've paid into the system and you have active work credits. When you're no longer able to work, you're too disabled to work, then when the application process starts, these are the questions people ask us. Can I work while applying for disability? And then we get the question, can I work while drawing those benefits? So these are the things Molly's going to talk about today. We have an office, our primary office is in Shepherdsville. So we are at 340 South Buckman Street, and that is the primary office. Of course, due to COVID, we're both working from home, working remotely most of the time, but we're always available by email or phone. And we also have satellite locations in Louisville and then in Brandenburg. So Social Security disability is a little bit different than any other type of law. Where we're at the federal courthouse, it's an administrative law. And so we don't have to take cases only in Bullitt County or the surrounding counties. It can be anywhere in the state of Kentucky where we can take a case and potentially work it for disability. So I'm going to turn this over to Molly and let her start our presentation.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. As Jennifer mentioned, our practice is a little bit different than a lot of other attorneys. We're singularly focused on Social Security disability and disability benefits. So that gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of how we practice cases. We can select the cases we want. And for us, it's really important because we want to be the best advocate that we can for people. So the first thing that I want to talk about in relation to Social Security disability benefits or SSDI benefits is what's called your onset date. That's the date that you became too disabled to work or a claimant became too disabled to work. And really for Social Security purposes, that's where the case turns. We have to show that that person became too disabled to work on or before that date. Unfortunately, it's a long process. The average time to process a case is nearly 245 days nationally. It's actually gone up because of COVID. All of our local Social Security offices and our Bullitt County local offices in Elizabethtown, all of their workers are working remotely. Our processing area, which is called DDS, Disability Determination Services in Frankfort, they're all working remotely. Even hearings are being held remotely. So all of that has really added to the time it takes to process a case. So we tell folks when they apply for benefits, it's usually about a year to a year and a half before we actually get in front of a judge and get a decision in their case. Because it is such a lengthy process, we always get questioned about, well, how can I survive financially if I can't work? Or what can I do to have some income while I'm waiting for my case to be processed. And you can work, and most people don't know that, but you can work and try to receive Social Security disability benefits. But what you have to be aware of is that Social Security has extremely strict limits on how much income you can have while you're applying for benefits. Their word or their phrase for that income is called substantial gainful activity, SGA. I made a little sheet for it. So SGA, you'll see it all the time in Social Security's literature and language. It's substantial gainful activity. That is a dollar amount that they put on the maximum amount you can make gross while waiting for your Social Security disability benefits to begin. That number can fluctuate a little bit every year based on cost of living adjustments or increases. So for this year, for 2021, our SGA or substantial gainful activity limit per month is $1,310 gross. And I highlighted it and emphasized it because it's gross. And that is not a lot of money, as you can imagine. It's pre-tax earnings. So that can often trip people up. They will go out, they'll try to work or get even a part-time job. You hit that $1,310 very quickly when it's gross. So we've seen that happen several times where people were working thinking they were under that limit, and unfortunately they're not. And that can be a real big problem for a claim. It can stop your claim. It can change your amended or alleged onset date or the date you became too disabled to work. So that number is extremely important. The other reason why that $1,310 gross per month is important is that Social Security will look at it month by month by month. So rather than saying, okay, for the year 2021, your gross income is, $15,000. They won't just divide that by 12 and come up with the number. They will look at it month by month by month. So you could have been for 11 months, but gone over one, and that can kick you right out of the program. So that number, that $1,310 gross, is per month, and they look at it every single month. The other thing that's really critical is this is applying while your case is pending. Of course, there are some other rules, and there's some little nuances for applicants who are, for example, vision impaired or hearing impaired. So today we're just talking about folks who are not in some of those special categories, that they're just workers who can no longer work because of a medical impairment and no longer work in a full-time capacity. So that earnings, it's really important, again, to keep it under that 1310 gross. And it's sort of difficult because on one hand, you're telling Social Security you're too disabled to work. You can't maintain that full-time 8-hour-a-day, 5-day-a-week schedule. But on the other hand, you are out working in some capacity. When that happens, when folks are working and applying, it always raises a red flag to Social Security. The first thing they say is, well, if the claimant can't work at this job full-time, but can do this part-time, why can't we find another job that he or she can perform full-time? It's sort of a slippery slope. It opens the door for Social Security to say, well, we think, he's maintaining this full-time or this part-time work at 1310 per month. Why can't he increase his hours a little bit and, go to that full-time level? So while it's understandable that most folks can't wait that year and a half without any income, it's much preferred if they can. It just sort of, takes away any inference that Social Security may have that he or she can work at a higher level. So what we tell clients when they ask us, can I work? It's always a yes, but. So we always say, if you can swing it financially to not work, if you can live off, savings or have some other, whatever it is, if your spouse is working or something like that, where you don't have to work, it really, it's preferable because it doesn't muddy the water so much as working. So that's the SGA is sort of what everything turns on, that $1,310 a month gross. What Social Security will call it, if a person does try to work during the application process, the person tries to work and let's just say they work for 3 or 4 months under that SGA level, but realize, oh, this isn't working out for me. I can't do it. I can't keep up. My medical conditions just are precluding me from working at all. Social Security will look at those earnings and say, we're not going to count that against you. That's an unsuccessful work attempt. So you'll sometimes see it as an unsuccessful work attempt, or UWA. That's this. So an unsuccessful work attempt is prior to being approved for benefits. You have to have stopped working for some period of time. So for example, when you apply for benefits, you can't be working. Usually what we tell people is you got to wait at least 32 months, at least 30 days to 2 months before you can go back and try to work. So the claimant must have stopped working for some period of time. And then it has to be related, that stoppage of work has to be related to their medical condition. So it can't be that the person got laid off and then applied for disability and then went back to work. It has to be related, that stoppage has to be related to the person's underlying medical impairment. If you do that for a period of 6 months or less, where you try to go back to work, you're under that $1,310 a month for a period of 6 months, Social Security won't count that against you. They'll just call it an unsuccessful work attempt. Lots of folks, and to their credit, lots of folks do try to go out and work or find something that would accommodate their particular medical conditions. And if they can't pull it off, it's okay, it won't be counted against them. If you go over that, again, that SGA level or 6 months, that's where we run into some trouble. Again, Social Security will say, well, if you're working this much, why can't you work just a little more to be at that full-time level so you're not eligible for disability benefits? The other thing that, again, it's a little bit complex, but the other thing that a work attempt can do is change the onset date, or the date you allege you became too disabled to work. So for example, if I said I became too disabled to work January 1st of 2020, I didn't work for a little while, but then I went back to work and I worked the rest of the year. And then I left work again, January of 2021. I can't go back and say, oh, I want to reclaim my old time from January 2020. I've lost that ability to say my onset date was January 1st of 2020. I have to now say it's January of 2021. So again, work, I understand people need to do it, and financially it's really difficult to survive without any income while this application process goes on, but it can really muddy the waters as far as your eligibility for benefits and when your benefits start. So we do encourage folks, if it's at all possible, not to work while this process is happening. Now there is a rule that you can get in addition to getting benefits. So if we go through this whole process, we get you approved for benefits, you can work after receiving your Social Security benefits. If you do start working, you have to inform the Social Security Administration. And again, you have to keep it under that $1,310 gross per month. Social Security sometimes will say to a claimant who's working that, we're going to check on your case in 2 years to see if you've medically improved enough to go back to work full time. So again, when somebody gets approved for benefits, they go back to work, it can really open the door for Social Security to come back and say, well, we think you've improved medically and we're going to terminate your benefits altogether. So it's a slippery slope. Obviously, we understand why people might want to go back to work after receiving Social Security disability benefits. The average amount of monthly benefits that a person receives is about $1,200. So as you can imagine, trying to survive on that $1,200 is extremely difficult. But again, if you go back to work, you're sort of opening that door to Social Security, coming back, reviewing your claim, saying, oh, well, you've made a medical improvement, we're going to terminate your benefits. So that's the last thing that we want to do. The other thing that is a little bit dangerous, if you go over that $1,310 per month and you continue to receive your benefits, if you go over that, Social Security will demand their money back. They will ask for repayment. Again, they'll analyze your earnings month by month by month, not your annual gross. And they'll say, well, in February, March, April, Molly went over $1,310. She shouldn't have received her underlying benefits. We want to get all that money back. We see that, unfortunately, a lot. We've had it happen with just all kinds of cases where people thought they were sort of doing the right thing. They were reporting to Social Security that they were working, they were trying to keep them informed, but they didn't realize that they were going over that month by month by month gross. And then Social Security is demanding tens of thousands of dollars in benefits back. So it's really, like I said, a very slippery slope when you open that door to go back to work. Now there's some other rules. Shocking that there's lots of rules with a governmental program. So there's some other rules regarding Social Security after you receive benefits, and that's called the trial work period. Now, where a trial work period is a little bit different, you're not bound by that SGA number, that $1,310. During a trial work period, again, you have to report it to Social Security. You can receive your monthly benefit and you can go over SGA. And you can do that for a period of 9 months in a 5-year period. So 9 months out of 60 months. And those 9 months do not have to be in a row. You could work 4 months over SGA, then stop for a while. You could work 2 months over SGA and stop for a while. But if you go past that 9 months within the 5-year, 60 months, that's where you're going to be in some trouble. And again, that's really confusing to people because the 9 months they think has to be in a row, and it's not. It's not a consecutive period. It's 9 months total out of 60 months. So that often again, causes people to run amok sort of unintentionally. Then all of a sudden they're getting this, bill from Social Security that they should have been, shouldn't have been receiving money. They have to pay all this money back. It becomes a real problem. It also becomes a pretty significant problem because there's not a lot of recourse. If you get demand for a repayment and you did go over, there's very little that can be done to sort of fix that problem. You will have to pay it back. There's some limited circumstances where you don't, but by and large, they want their money back. So you have to be very diligent and very careful. If you go over that $1,310 SGA per month, for 9 months, 9 months total out of 60, they're going to terminate your benefits and they're probably going to want some money back. Social Security encourages people to go back to work. They have what's called a Ticket to Work program. Ticket to Work is a little misleading, in my opinion, just because they don't really clarify this 9-month rule. We've had lots of people sort of go through this program that Social Security puts on. They don't realize that they're receiving their benefits and going over that they've got to pay money back. It's just a little bit difficult. And of course, the goal would be to have people returning to work and being productive and able to contribute. But ultimately, a lot of these folks can't really maintain that 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40-hour work week schedule. So those programs have their place, but it's just one of those things that you have to be extremely mindful of. And a lot of these programs really don't clarify that for the participants. We also have, a lot of times get questions, and Jennifer might talk about this a little bit too. We get lots of questions about what if I'm receiving benefits and I have a change in financial circumstances. And again, this is only related to people who receive SSDI or Title II benefits for those who've worked, who've paid in. One of the questions is about usually an inheritance, or they receive something as a gift from someone else. So in these circumstances, Social Security does not count that against the person, does not count that against the person who's receiving benefits. That person who's receiving the disability benefits has worked, paid into the system of their own accord and own volition. Because they've paid taxes and paid in, it's just like any other insurance program. They're going to continue to receive those benefits irrespective of a change in financial circumstances. So the example we always use is you could hit the lottery tomorrow and still get your monthly Social Security disability benefits because you worked, you paid in, and really that's your money, coming back to you. Same with like an inheritance of land, that can change your financial circumstances pretty dramatically. But the value of the land does not impede or prohibit you from receiving your monthly benefits. As far as other kinds of work goes, we often hear about people working for cash, which we frown on, of course. We can't stop people from doing that, but ethically, they are obligated to report any income to Social Security disability. It is definitely an issue that some people will work for cash and they don't report it, and there's really not a lot that anyone can do about that. There is a fraud hotline. If you see somebody doing that, you can definitely report the person, because it is inappropriate and it does sort of give all of the other disability recipients a bad name. One of the other things that Social Security is really starting to do or implement now, to check on claimants, to see if claimants are receiving benefits and it's still appropriate for them to receive benefits. They're putting on reviews. So for example, if I go to a hearing and I win the case, Social Security may put in that decision that they want to see that claimant back in 3 years, 36 months, because that claimant could have what's called a medical improvement. So this often applies for younger individuals or individuals who were in, say, a car accident. You had a lot of traumatic injuries from a car accident. Your recovery lasted 2 or 3 years, but you may down the road be ready to return to employment. So Social Security will put a review on that decision, and they'll say, okay, we want to see this claimant back in 36 months to see if there's been a medical improvement. We can sort of slide that person off of our books, and that person can return to work. So really, the work that people can do, it is available. It is something that you have to report to Social Security, and you just have to be extremely careful. Got to be careful every month that you're not over that 1310, and you have to be careful with what kind of work that you're doing. And I think Jennifer may be talking about that a little bit. Jennifer, am I right about the type of work?
Yes.
Okay. So Jennifer, I'm going to have you talk about that, and then I'll jump back in if we need anything, if there's something else for us to talk about.
Okay, so yes, I did want to talk about the type of work, because I get these questions all the time. There's someone, that we're filing disability for, and they need some money coming in. So they say, can I work? And as Molly just answered, the answer is yes, you can work. You have to be mindful of that gross amount, but also you need to be mindful of the type of work you're doing. You can't have an allegation of a severe back injury that's precluding you from working, but then working a little bit on the side on a very physical job. That's going to be hard to overcome in an application process, and to argue that you can't work, but yet you're doing something very physical. So the type of work is very important. If it's going to be a sedentary type job, that may be something that we can overcome in an argument. But anything physical, when you have physical ailments, is going to be hard to argue. So the type of work is very important when we're talking about working during the application process or even after receiving benefits, because of those reviews that Molly was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. It really, again, that work, any type of work, but particularly physical type labor, labor intensive jobs, really opens the door for Social Security to review a case and to possibly terminate a case. So again, it's sort of counterintuitive. If on one hand you're saying I'm too disabled to work, but you're doing a really physical, like a warehouse job or a landscaping job, even if it's part-time, it's very difficult to overcome that argument. So if it's at all possible, especially during the application process, getting that person approved, getting the benefits started, we do try to tell everybody to try not to work, to try not to have earnings. It can just really muddy the waters. Another question we get asked sort of along the same lines is in relation to unemployment income. And that's been a big one recently because of the pandemic. A lot of people are receiving unemployment benefits at a really, really high rate, or a much higher rate than normal. So that problem, again, it's something that you can do. A person waiting in line for a disability application to be approved, that person can receive unemployment benefits. but it really does make things more difficult for us, because on one hand, you're telling unemployment every time you verify that you want to receive unemployment benefits, that you are actively looking for work, that you are out there trying to find a job. And then on the other hand, we're telling Social Security disability, I'm too medically impaired. I have so much happening and wrong with me that I can't work at any level in a full-time way. So again, you can receive those unemployment benefits, but it does complicate the process for us. Another question we get about the unemployment benefits is related to having to pay it back. And the short answer is no, you don't have to pay it back if we do win your case. So it is almost like a double dip, which I sometimes struggle with, because on one hand, again, you're saying you can't work, and on the other hand, you say you're actively looking for work. So you can receive those unemployment benefits and you can receive disability without having to pay it back. Another question or another sort of situation we get are folks who are receiving workers' comp. So a lot of times people who've been injured on the job, they're not working, but they're receiving what is in essence like a wage, usually at a reduced rate, 60% or whatever it may be, from an employer. Now, interestingly, that wage, even though the person is not working, that counts against a disability award. So it's kind of, again, it's sort of counterintuitive that on one hand, unemployment doesn't count, but workers' comp, where the person was working, was paying and was too injured to work and was receiving work comp, that counts against it. And they do a very complex, what's called a windfall calculation for those who receive disability benefits and workers' comp benefits. And the workers' comp benefits will almost always significantly reduce the Social Security disability benefits. Any workers' comp award has to be reported to Social Security. And again, it's kind of counterintuitive, but that does reduce the amount of benefits if that person, if that worker is continuing to receive a reduced wage from an employer. So I know we've covered a lot of stuff today, but the big takeaways are, if a person wants to apply for disability benefits and needs to work, you can, but, and that's what I want everybody to sort of take away from today. You can, but be careful to keep it under $1,310 a month gross. Be careful and report it to Social Security so they are at least aware. Nothing worse than getting, all the way to a hearing level and finding out that there was work and I didn't know. It really, again, is extremely difficult to overcome that. And be careful about what kind of work you're doing. If you're doing extremely physical labor, it is an instant red flag to Social Security. It gives them that ability to open the door and say, well, if he or she can perform this really physical, intense job, then why can't he or she perform a sedentary job at a full-time level? So our preference is always that you don't work, but we also understand the reality of the situation that sometimes it's just impossible because of the length of time it takes to get benefits. Unfortunately, I don't see that weight improving anytime soon. So hopefully, if you know somebody who's applying for benefits or somebody's got questions about work and receiving benefits, this gives you a little bit of clarity in kind of a complex situation. Jennifer, is there anything you wanted to add or anything that we didn't talk about?
Nope, I think you covered most of it.
Okay. So obviously we'll take any questions that you have this time, and I am not Zoom savvy, so I'm going to try to figure out how to see these questions. But we'll certainly try to field them as any of them come in.
So Molly, my golf game is hurting real bad and it's like work, so I can't play golf.
I got you, Bill. Do we need to start a GoFundMe for your golf cart?
Hey, Molly, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm and of course it's service connected kind of stuff, but I'm in a bunch of groups with a lot of veterans. A lot of them are getting the service connected disability
Sure.
and stuff like that. And I see them talking about SSI all the time as well. Is there a resource that you trust that you would recommend that, if I'm in that chat or something like that, that I can send them to or say, hey, too many barracks lawyers on those Facebook stuff. So.
Yeah, so that's a great question. With people receiving service-connected benefits from the VA or from military service, Social Security has sort of a different set of rules. Of course, they have a different set of rules for those folks. SSI, with all of its income limits, the maximum amount of money that you can receive from SSI, again, this isn't what we were talking about with SSD, this is SSI. SSI means that they haven't worked enough into our, Social Security system to get work credits. So SSI will count that military benefit against you. And if the benefit is over, I mean, it's a very low amount. I think it's $1,100. You can't get SSI. Now the max SSI award is, I think, $804 now with the cost of living increase. So really SSI isn't what you want. You want to get SSD. And SSD would not count those benefits against you. You could, like I said, hit the lottery and still get your SSDI benefits. And SSDI turns on whether the person worked and paid into the system. And the rule of thumb is a person has had to have at least 5 years of full-time work where taxes were deducted and they contributed to Social Security. So a military person receiving a percentage or a benefit from their disability would definitely, for SSI purposes, have it counted against them. But SSDI, it shouldn't hamper that at all.
I might have been shortening the SSI and SSD. I thought they were the same thing. So
yeah, that's so common. Everybody sort of just uses disability interchangeably, but they're really two separate programs. SSI is medically you have to qualify the same, but SSI is funded out of a safety net. It's a budget set aside, so that's why there's rules on how much income you can have to qualify for that set aside money, and why there's a cap on how much you can get a month gross, which again is at 800. I think it's 804 now. They just raised it a little bit in 2021. So SSI is really not the one you want to be in. You want to be in that bigger bucket of money where you worked and you paid in.
Yeah, that's not even enough for people to eat. I mean,
it's not.
Are they actively trying to dissuade people? Is that kind of your?
I mean, I think that's part of it. So SSI people, it's really unfortunate, but not only are they sort of hampered or hindered by that really low dollar amount, if they do go out and work, Social Security will take money off the top of that. So they'll take $300-400, even if that person's earning maybe $700 or $800 on the side, then all of a sudden their SSI goes down. So it's really difficult for SSI recipients to have any source of income. If they're living with a parent, Social Security will say, well, you're getting food and shelter for free. We're going to take $250 away from you. If you are getting any sort of, they'll even sometimes look at child support. They're not really supposed to take food stamps into account, but they do it all the time. So it's just any sort of benefit that you get when it's SSI only reduces that dollar amount. So it's an extremely meager amount of money to begin with, and then really can be reduced for any reason. It is by design, I think.
I appreciate it, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, that was a very long-winded explanation.
Oh, no, I keep losing my mouse.
Does anyone else have any questions for Molly or Jennifer?
I'm just curious, how does a person, if they're going through this and they come to you, do you handle this on a contingency basis? Is that what?
Yes, that's exactly right. So all Social Security disability representatives and attorneys are bound by a federal statute about how we get paid.
Okay.
We don't get paid unless we win the case. It's just like those cheesy commercials you see on TV, with like personal injury lawyers. It's sort of the same. We got to win to get paid. And our fees are based on any back pay that a claimant accumulates. So if, for example, a case takes 2 years and Social Security should have been paying you for those 2 years, that is back pay that's accumulating. Our fee comes out of that back pay. Our fee is 25% or $6,000, whatever is less. Social Security calculates it. They send a breakdown to the claimant. They send a breakdown to me. Nobody writes me a check or anything like that. It all happens automatically. So it's a really straightforward process. So no upfront money at all. And if somebody does try to do that to somebody, report them. That's not right.
Thank you.
Molly?
Yeah.
I think it's very important what you guys do, because that's all you take and focus on. And people think attorneys do a lot of different things, which they can, but you guys know that stuff inside and out. And I think that's very important. I know a lot of times on Facebook, somebody says something and, even other attorneys tell them, go to Molly Burke, okay? So we're glad that there is a specialist here that can deal with that one sector that, we do come across people, that needs help.
Yeah, thank you. And that's really a big reason why we chose to really narrow our practice. We were doing some other kinds of law, but it just didn't make sense with, there's just a lot of bad information out there. So we're really glad to be focusing just on that one area. We feel like it's an important area that's oftentimes neglected. And, it's in a way we feel like, and it's important for us, we feel like we're giving back. We want to help people who are sort of down on their luck, for lack of a better term, who just need some help and sort of need to get back on their feet. So we're really glad to be able to provide that service to everybody.
And the next time you get a haircut, would you say you have all some of the clippings? I
will. Listen, I will get this all ready for you. I want